Hello and welcome to the Road to the Garden podcast. Matt St. Jean here, as always, joined by local Providence fan Tommy Godin and Joe Howie. How you doing tonight, guys?
I'll let Tommy go first.
I've been better, Matt. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. I don't like this background, but I am a man of my word. So, all of our Spotify and Apple Music listeners, please tune in on our YouTube or Twitter to see this monstrosity going on behind me.
I think I one time used that background as my computer screensaver when we were at Providence. So I like the selection.
It's a nice background. Shout out the graphic designer. I found this. It was like the third clip art picture I found on Google Images. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's a nice background. Shout out whoever made it. Just not for me.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a
pretty
nice
cool.
looking picture there. As I'm sure you can gather from Tommy's background if you're watching the video here, we're going to be talking about Providence's big win at Villanova. Tommy and I were there. We're going to get Joe's input here from the Friar perspective. Big game. A big win for Creighton over Xavier on Saturday, and the two of the teams in those games, Providence, Xavier, they're going to be meeting Wednesday night in the game of the week. We're going to be talking about all that and so much more on tonight's episode, keeping you up to date here on the Big East. A couple reminders before we get into it. First, we've teamed up with SeatGeek this season to get you the best deals for tickets to your favorite teams. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, and they're here to give you some great deals. Get in on the fun and head over to SeatGeek, download their app, and use code NCAA Hoops Digest for $20 off your first purchase. And another reminder, this podcast is presented by House Enterprise and in partnership with House of College Hoops. Head over to our site, house-enterprise.com, for more info. That's where you can find today's power rankings if you'd like to see them. Catch up on where the Big East is today. Should we start with this Providence Villanova game on Sunday? It was the noon game there on FS1 at Wells Fargo Center. It was the return of Justin Moore. That was the big news before the game. After the game, though, Justin Moore was not the guard that was the story. Instead, it was Jared Bynum. 19 points, 17 of them in the second half. He made some big plays there down the stretch. Tommy, I know we got to feel what it was like in the building, but I want to start with Joe here from kind of the outside the building perspective on this game. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I was a little nervous going into this game from the Providence side of things. Villanova had a couple of days off. Justin Moore was obviously back in the rotation. And, this is a Providence team that was coming off of two comfortable wins over DePaul and Butler. Not to mention that, there was a very rowdy Philadelphia tailgate going on in anticipation of not only the Villanova game, but the Philadelphia Eagles game that was going to be played right next door. So going into this, I kind of thought that all arrows were pointing towards Villanova, and there's the hat. There's the Eagle hat.
Go Birds.
Go Giants.
Oh boy.
But I thought everything was kind of pointing in favor of the Wildcats yesterday. Ed Cooley likes to say that when you travel on the road in the Big East, you come into the building already down 10. And I think you kind of saw that with the way Villanova punched first. But you got to credit Providence and their ability to stay with it. And, especially Jared Bynum late in the second half, they're kind of going off. I don't think Villanova had a lead higher than 7 throughout the entirety of the game. And I think that kind of just embodies the way the entirety of the thing went. It was punch, counter punch, and Providence was lucky at the end to have the final say.
Is that how it felt to you, Tommy?
Yeah, absolutely. This was definitely a game of runs. Villanova started the game a little bit hot. It was nice to see they scored on 5 of their opening 7 possessions. But the impact of getting Justin Moore back this game and beyond is just massive. I tweeted about it. I think one of the biggest beneficiaries of having Justin Moore back is Cam Whitmore. 21-9 against Providence. He looked good. There was a sense of urgency from him that, was never really questioned, but you could have stood for more. And that was nice to see out of Cam Whitmore again yesterday. But yeah, in this one, it was a game of runs. Like you said, Bynum, 17 of his 19 points came in the second half, including his own 8-0 run where I just stood still, turned, looked at you, and said, "What is going on?" Like it was,
And that took the life out of the building too, because that was a close game, and Nova goes up by 7 points there, their biggest lead of the game with about 10 minutes to go, and Friars had not hit a three. They were 0 of 11 to start from deep. Bynum hits one. He had a stop, go down the other end. Figure he hit one, we'll try it again. He hits the next one. You get a stop, you come back down the other end, he gets another basket. And it's all of a sudden the Friars lead after all that. It's funny, that was the turning point in the game, but Villanova did retake the lead after that. The Friars did need to get back on top to hold it.
The Villanova did retake the lead, Matt, and I'd like to hear your perspective on what it was like in the arena, but watching at home, that's where I felt the momentum shift. Is Villanova builds up that 7-point lead. You know, they're getting comfortable. Whitmore's turning it on. All of a sudden, Jared Bynum, in the span of, I think it was less than 2 minutes, goes on his 8-0 run. Even when Villanova took the lead back, it kind of felt like the Friars had taken back control. And you kind of sensed it in the crowd. And I mean, I wasn't there, but just from listening on TV, it seemed a little bit deflated when Villanova did retake the lead. Is that how you guys felt there?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'd
Yeah,
say so.
the life was just sucked right out of the crowd. I mean, they were hot early. They got up on that 7-point lead in the second half. I think it was under the under 16 media timeout too.
Yeah.
And they were just as fired up as they were when they saw Justin Moore walk out of that tunnel. I mean, the whole game they had really good energy. And yeah, that 8-0 run was absolutely the turning point of the game.
And I think one of the things that stood out to me of that run, it wasn't just the 8-0 run. It was Villanova does answer to take the lead. When the Friars come back down the other end, Bynum hits Corey Floyd, and Corey Floyd hits the three. Yeah. That, to me, was kind of what was really the turning point. That and the Hopkins three after. Because when it's one guy can get hot, but then eventually he'll get cold again. He usually doesn't stay that way for the entirety of the game. So it was kind of, all right, well, we can weather a run and we'll make our own. And then it was other guys getting involved in the scoring. And I thought that was really what it didn't put the game away, because obviously this was a 1-point game with under 30 seconds remaining. But that's why the Friars kind of got to play with a lead and got the opportunities they did to put the game away, which they made the most of.
I think. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Tommy.
No, all good. You're good.
I was gonna say, I think this is why Jared Bynum is so invaluable to this Providence team, is because of, you know, his ability to not only score but find guys and make plays. I think the Corey Floyd three in the corner was another dagger, because again, Corey Floyd is the type of player that it's like, you know, he's hit or miss. He doesn't get a ton of minutes. Obviously, he's been on an upward trajectory the past couple of weeks. But, you know, that's not the type of play that you think is going to be made there. You know, Bynum's got a wide open lane and you have Corey Floyd on the wing, but Bynum gives him the ball and Corey Floyd sinks the 3-pointer. And he's obviously building off of Bynum's confidence and Bynum's momentum at the time. So I think that's a great point, Matt, about, you know, Bynum not only scoring, but finding guys too. And then obviously the Hopkins three, he was ice cold from deep for the entirety of the game until that point. And then you saw, you know, there was a little bit of enthusiasm from Hopkins to his guys as they were getting back on defense after that play. So I think there was definitely a spark on the offensive end of things that translated defensively once Bynum got going.
Yeah, and that just goes to Ed Cooley and Providence. I mean, this is turning into a historically good program and closing out these late games, these 1-2 point games, and call it luck, call it what you will. I mean, at some point you have to look back at Ed Cooley and say, I mean, this is just who he is. But as much as it was Providence doing a great job closing out the game, there were more self-inflicted wounds from Villanova. I mean, nobody's blaming Justin Moore, but he smokes a dunk and then has a little bit of a wild pass out of bounds to Brandon Slater under the basket. Matt, you were saying it on the way out, on our way to the car. I mean, Villanova's like 1-8 in games decided by under 5 points or less this year. Having Justin Moore back, if they had Justin Moore healthy this whole year, I don't know what that record looks like. I don't know what it looks like moving forward when he shakes a little bit more of this rust off. So for Villanova, man, this is a loss, and there's no such thing as moral victories. But having
not at this point, no, not for Villanova at this point. And that's where I looked up the stat. I believe it's actually 2-5 in games decided by 5 points or less. It feels like 1-8 for Villanova the way things have gone this year. And I mean, I think it's worth noting when we talk about Villanova, this Justin Moore comes back. This still isn't a full strength Villanova because Jordan Longino is out for at least another 2 weeks here, and that's just and that's you got to play through injuries. That's life in the Big East. That's life in basketball. You got to have depth, but There's just too many. It feels like death by a thousand paper cuts for Villanova this year.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought up Jordan Longino. I was going to bring that up as well. When Jay Wright did, I think it was the Penn game earlier this year in the Finneran Pavilion, he called Jordan Longino Villanova's best defender. And aside from that, he's a sniper from the outside. He's smart with the ball. He's another guard, and he's just bench depth that they can add in there. So missing Jordan Longino hurts. Missing more for this long, that definitely hurts. But yeah, there were a lot of things to look forward to for the rest of the season. I mean, they're not chasing the Providences, the Marquettes, Xavier, UConn. They're not chasing that tier right now. What Villanova needs to do is chase Seton Hall. Seton Hall is right there on the bubble right now. The first 4 teams out, whatever it was, the last time it came out. Villanova has a chance. I mean, they have a lot of quad 1 games left, a lot of games that can really boost their resume. I think they're going to have to sweep one of ththese teams in the Big East, which is a very tall task. But if they pick up some wins later on in the year, if they turn into a Seton Hall, they could sneak a bid, and I don't think that's something we'd be saying 2-3 weeks ago.
Well, and I think most importantly for Villanova, you're kind of looking at the Big East tournament right now, because then you've got Justin Moore with some time under his belt back from the injury. I don't think he looked good in stretches, but he was not himself on Sunday.
Right.
Hopefully Jordan Longino's back. You'll get Mark Armstrong with basically a full season under his belt. Cam Whitmore with basically a full season under his belt. Villanova is a talented enough team to win 4 games at Madison Square Garden. This is a better team than the Georgetown team in 2020 that ended up 2021 that ended up winning there. They can do that. We'll see if they actually do. Obviously, those are a rarity, and the teams at the top of the Big East this year are really, really good. It'd be a difficult road for Villanova, but I think it's kind of, you want to tune up and get ready for that. That's your big opportunity. Talking about the tournament, Joe, what's the perspective here on Providence heading into the tournament? Where do you think they will be seated, and what can they do coming forward to move that up and down?
I feel like, mentally for me, I've kind of locked us into that 3 seed. I think, Marquette is really good. Xavier is really good. And we still have to play the Musketeers twice. Creighton's obviously surging again. I think Providence realistically is probably going to be the 3 seed. If, by some miracle, we split with Xavier or sweep Xavier, which we did last season, but is not the same Xavier team. They're much better. I think we could probably squeeze out a 2 seed, but I think the 3 line is realistic for Providence and at least a trip to semifinal Friday. Obviously, we saw what happened last year with the 1 seed, and Creighton beat the doors off of us on Friday afternoon. But no, I think, sometime Thursday afternoon we'll play, get to Friday, and then you go from there, because then it all depends on matchups. But the way that the Big East is shaking out this year, it kind of reminds me of the end of the 2019-2020 season, where you've got 3 teams at the top that were in that season. It was Creighton, Seton Hall, Villanova, and then you've got that 4th team that's kind of just behind, and I think that would be Creighton this year, with Marquette, Xavier, and Providence as the 1, 2, and 3. So, definitely trending towards the top. We're starting to see the conference really break into these tiers now as the conference season progresses, and you're seeing the top 3 kind of pull away, with Creighton just slowly creeping behind.
Yeah. And hey, if we want to make an analogy to that season, which I absolutely love, by the way, that extends to the team that finished in 5th place. The 5th place team in the Big East in 2019-2020 was Butler.
Yep.
That year, Butler started the year 15-1. They ended up going, they were ranked, I think, as high as number 5 in the country.
Yep.
Yeah. They lost to DePaul. They ended up going 10-8 in the Big East, and they would have had a date with Providence in the 2:30 slot on Thursday had the Big East tournament been played there, which would have been, I think, a very interesting game, the way those 2 teams were playing at that point. I think that compares very well to where UConn is at the moment. We will see what happens with UConn down the stretch here. While we're looking around the state of the Big East right now, let's take a look at 2 of the other teams in the top tier who played one another on Saturday, and that's Xavier and Creighton. This is a Creighton team that has kind of quietly snuck back up into a lot of conversations about who could win the Big East, and conversations about how far you can go in the NCAA tournament. This is a Creighton team that very briefly snuck into the Ken Pom top 10 before dropping back to 11 now. They've been in the top 30 all year long. The record isn't great. They beat a very good Xavier team by quite a bit at the Pink Out Night there in Omaha on Saturday. Tommy, what do we think about where this Creighton team is now?
I saw a tweet, and I wish I could credit whoever tweeted it. So if you're listening, go ahead and at me on Twitter because I don't know who said it. But they said they posted this picture of all these analytics, and they said Creighton's not the team that won in Maui anymore. They're better, and I actually 100% agree with that. You saw Farabello getting into some shots, but I like role players like him are going to go a long way for this Creighton team who severely lacks depth. I mean, the starters are up there talent wise with anyone in the country, but I mean, they had all this preseason hype behind them. I think the train got derailed for a minute, and now it's back on the tracks.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Looking at the box score right now, Tommy, I like what you said. Creighton is, really top heavy with their starters. I think all of them played 30 or more minutes, and all of them scored in double figures, with the lowest of that being 11 points. I mean, this is a Creighton team that has had the most roller coaster of a season as you can imagine. We'll exclude UConn for the purpose of this discussion, but this is Creighton returning to this early season form. I think of the Thanksgiving week multi-team events that they were playing in back then and how good they looked back then. I think Creighton has finally returned to the preseason favorite for the conference, but when you lose games, you are what your record says you are, and you have to do the work on the back end to make up for it. So they've dug themselves quite a hole, and it's no fault of their own. Injury gets them. You're losing your best player and your best shot blocker, but Creighton is sneaky. This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that's followed the Big East from start to finish. Like, this Creighton team doesn't look foreign. It just looks foreign in a scope, but you need to widen that back to the beginning of the season because this isn't anything new.
No, and I think the expectation that Creighton was kind of at minimum an Elite Eight or a Final Four team coming into the year was probably misguided based on what we saw from this team last year. People forget that Creighton last year, they only got into the top 50 of KenPom at the very, very, very end of the season. This was a team that was kind of on the outside looking in, and they put things together at the last second. And they got internal development. Like, this is a good team. But going from 50 to 5 is a huge, huge leap to take when you're losing two veterans, and all of your improvements basically going to have to come from guys who are already in the program. That said, this Creighton team does not have any bad losses really at this point. At least all of the losses are explainable. In Big East play, their only losses are at Marquette, at UConn, and at Xavier. None of those are bad. They have a neutral site loss to Arizona. Nothing wrong with that. A road loss to Texas. Nothing wrong with that. Both of those by 5 points or less. They have a home loss to Nebraska, which is tough, but that's when Kalkbrenner was really starting to get sick. And then you miss him for the BYU and Arizona State games. And I think he was out for the Marquette game too, if I'm remembering correctly. So, yeah, he was. Yeah, so that's the stretch where they didn't have him. Yeah, you lose one of the best players in the conference. Of course, you're going to struggle a little bit. All of it's explainable. All of it you can kind of knock off the resume if they get the wins they should down the stretch here. Getting this one over Xavier was huge for them. This is one you couldn't lose. You need to have some bit of a resume to make the computer numbers matter. Or the computer numbers will help you get into the tournament. They're not going to get you all the way up to a 2 or a 3 seed just because you're at 10 in the computers. You actually have to win games to get to that point too. And Creighton can do that. Creighton can be a 2 or a 3 seed in March. If they win a lot of these games down the stretch, which they should be able to do. I want to talk about Xavier here for a second too. What do we think this loss means for Xavier in the greater context? I'll come back to you, Joe. Does this impact them at all, or is this just a road loss in the Big East and you move on?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think before this loss, Xavier was, the favorite for the number 1 seed for the Big East tournament and the regular season championship. I think this loss knocked Xavier down into the same kind of sub tier that Marquette and Providence were in, and has allowed Marquette to kind of jump them. Before I'll even say before that DePaul loss, I think Xavier was the clear cut favorite, and now it's kind of murky between the top 3. If I had to guess, Xavier's going to have to sweep Providence to ensure a top 2 finish. But in terms of NCAA projections or anything like that, I think they're fine. I don't really think in the long term this is anything that's going to kill them. I just think with respect to Big East bragging rights and the regular season title, this is definitely a pothole in the road for them.
Tommy, do you agree?
I'm a little bit more worried about Xavier. I'm not. The panic button's still tabled right now. I'm not pulling the panic button out right now, but I am a little bit more worried than I was before. And I mean, it's on the offensive end for this Xavier team. They were beating teams with this outstanding offensive showing, and this Creighton game. I mean, they only put up 67 points. Now that doesn't tell the whole story of what happened in the game. But over the last 4 games, Creighton, Connecticut, Georgetown, and DePaul, they've looked okay. They haven't looked great. I mean, I know in that Creighton game, you saw Sean Miller on the sidelines, and I mean, he called I don't have the exact timing, but he called 2 timeouts in what felt like 2 minutes, and he pulled Nunji out in the first half. He had 2 fouls in the first half, and then it was just
Fremantle too. Fremantle and Nunji both got into early foul trouble, which is tough for them. It's tough to lose both of your big guys, and they don't have a lot of depth there.
Yeah, and I mean, Nunji just played defense with his hands straight up, kind of a lackadaisical effort, and Sean Miller essentially sent the message: if you're not going to go out there and play hard, play smart, then you're not going to play at all. And Jack Nunji, one of the best players in the conference, he sent right to the bench. So I am a little bit more worried for the Xavier team now, especially because they were never prominent on defense. But if this offense is sputtering a little bit, they could pick up another sneaky bad loss like DePaul.
Yeah, and I think Xavier is a very, very, very good team with a Final Four type ceiling with that offense. You look at the first half at UConn. The first half at UConn might be like the best half of basketball anybody's played here in conference play when you take everything else into consideration. And then UConn climbs back in the second half because you don't stay hot forever. And the defense for Xavier is just not good. Like Marquette is a team right now that profiles as an elite offense and a kind of meh defense in the computers. And there's a huge difference between where they are. They're significantly like Marquette's first in offense. Xavier is sixth. If you look at the actual efficiency ratings there, Marquette is way higher than Xavier, like by a couple points difference there. In the defense, the ranking is like 20, 25 points off there. Xavier's barely inside the top 100 for defensive efficiency here. And that's just, you don't see champions that have that kind of a profile of a team. Having an elite unit like Xavier's offense is awesome, but you need something at the other end or else you're just going to have a hard time. And like the DePaul game, if you have a game where you just can't hit the shots, literally anybody can beat you because your defense isn't going to win a game for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to this matchup that they had with Creighton, I know we're going to talk about Tyler Kolek here in a second, but Andrew Nembhard, not really the emergence of him because he's always been solid, but what an outstanding game from him. 11 points, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists, just too shy of a triple-double. Point guard play for that team the Creighton team is going to go a long way, and Ryan Nembhard looked absolutely outstanding on one of the biggest stages in the regular season.
Yeah. He's come along nicely. He and Trey Alexander. Trey Alexander got some time at the point last year when Nembhard got hurt, and I think having a 2 guys back there who can do a little bit for you helps.
I was going to say that kind of reminds me of the Luan Pipkins, David Duke dichotomy in the backcourt from Providence a couple years ago, where you really have 2 point guards, one that's not a traditional point guard and one that is, and they can kind of share the responsibilities because Nembhard looks fantastic right now. And you have to think some of his scoring comes because he can play off the ball too.
Yeah. And the depth right now for Creighton is just, it's not there. And it's not going to be with this roster. That's not going to change overnight at this point. So having 2 guards who can do multiple things there it gives you internal depth. It's the same 5 guys, but they can do more and they're more versatile. So it gives you a little bit more protection than other teams that don't have quite that versatility in their starting lineup. Yeah. Do we want to go around the horn here with the rest of the Big East real quick before looking ahead at the schedule?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. All right. Those are the 2 big games from Saturday and Sunday. The other games Saturday afternoon, Marquette at DePaul. Just a note in this one, Marquette breaking out the yellow uniforms for the first time this season. Apparently they had a supply chain issue on the yellow uniforms. Got to see them for the first time. You get the yellow versus blue there. Very aesthetically pleasing game. And apparently Tyler Kolek likes it a lot because he came 1 rebound shy of a triple-double there. 24 points, 10 assists, 9 rebounds. What a game for him. David Joplin, 8 of 11 from deep, came off the bench to give him, I believe, 28 points in 24 minutes. So crazy stuff there from David Joplin. And the late game, Seton Hall at Butler Saturday night, another 20-point loss for Butler. That's 4 in a row for the Bulldogs. Seton Hall just took it to him. So that was a tough one. And then Sunday afternoon, after Providence, Villanova, Georgetown at St. John's. I do want to talk about this game for 1 second here because Georgetown had a shot to go back-to-back wins here in the middle of the Big East. And A.J. Storr said, no, that's not happening. He hit that 3 at the end. Some pretty clutch shooting there, Joe. I know you were tuned into this one.
Yeah, I mean, St. John's hits a 3 to take the lead. Georgetown has a second and change left to retake the lead, and they
inbounded it and the ball got knocked out of bounds.
Well, you're right.
So then they were down to a second.
And they had Primo Spears inbounding, and I forget who the shooter was, but he pump fake, had both defenders in the air, and then had a wide open look from 3 that rimmed out. I mean, Georgetown was on the verge of winning 2 games in 1 week. That was Bryson Mozone, I believe. Who took that shot, who was a transfer from, I believe, USC Upstate, who came into Georgetown. And he hit the 3 that A.J. Storr answered with the 3 he took. So he had given Georgetown the lead. He got another shot there. And they said on the broadcast he didn't get the shot away. So I'm not sure if it would have counted or not had it gone in. It was razor thin. Yeah, I was going to say it was close based on just the eye test alone. And I just got to say, John Fanta, whenever he's on the call, he does such a good job of bringing the excitement into your home. I mean, the way that man screams into the microphone, it's like incredible. It's just incredible.
We always love a good Fanta shout out here at the Road to the Garden. We're big fans of him over here. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I'm not gonna lie to the viewers. I didn't watch a second of this game. I was watching the Eagles kick the crap out of the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship game. Shout out the Birds. I'm looking through the box score here a little bit. Primo Spears played all 40 minutes and was 4 of 6 from 3. He had 25. That was absolutely it. I mean, he's him.
Primo Spears is so good, and that's why the end of game decision making there for Georgetown makes no sense to me, because you got a second and I think it was 3/10, 4/10, something like that left. Why is Primo Spears inbounding? You don't have enough time to get the ball back to the inbounder for him to take the shot. So whoever inbounds is going to be out of the play. They cannot take the game-winning shot, and Patrick Ewing put his best scorer as the one guy who could be on the floor but not take the shot. I don't understand that.
Well, you just answered your own question, Matt.
Patrick Ewing.
There you go.
Yeah, and that's why Georgetown has lost this many games in the past 2-3 years here. It's not good. I do want to talk about the St. John side though, because that was a clutch shot from A.J. Storr, and he had a decent week. He had 23 points at Creighton earlier this week, and then I think it was 12 in this game. So he had 35 points this week, and he had a game winner in MSG for a freshman. It's a nice experience for him.
Yeah, it's too bad they got their asses kicked by Creighton.
Was Denver Anglin available for Georgetown?
Not that I'm aware of. No, I don't think so. I'm not entirely sure what his status is at the moment, but he hasn't played in a couple games now.
I mean, he was one of the best shooters in that high school class. I mean, it makes you wonder.
Yeah. Hey, if you're a Georgetown or a St. John's fan looking at that, it's tough given where those programs are right now. But hey, you get an exciting game at the Garden, which is always a good thing. And you got some young players making plays there, which I think should make you feel better about where those two schools are going to be next season. Like Storr's a freshman. That St. John's needs shooting. He'll be around next year, assuming he doesn't transfer. So that's good for them. And Primo Spears was on a good team. We'd be talking about him as a first-team All-Big East type of guy with the amount he can score. So if they can turn that program around him a little bit at all next year, all of a sudden he can be the guy that puts him over the top, becomes an X factor, and you can do a rebuild very quickly in college basketball these days with the transfer portal and enough money.
PC, Portal College, baby.
Speaking of Portal College, should we talk about our game of the week this Wednesday?
We shall.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, we're going to look ahead here. Well, I know we usually go in chronological order. So this is going to be the second game we talk about because we do have a Tuesday night game we can briefly touch on here. The Tuesday night game this week, 8 p.m. Eastern, Fox Sports 1, UConn at DePaul. This shouldn't be close. However, UConn is not as hot as it once was. And this is a DePaul team that did just manage to beat Xavier a couple weeks ago. They haven't done anything since then. They did lose to Georgetown in that span. So maybe we shouldn't read too much into that, but could DePaul pull an upset here?
I think they can. I mean, I can guarantee you that nobody thought that Sean Miller's Xavier squad was going to walk into Wintrust and leave with an L. And I can guarantee you Dan Hurley is thinking the same thing. But if you look at the way UConn has played, I don't know. I mean, is it going to happen? Probably not. I think, UConn is disciplined enough defensively to not let DePaul steal one from them. But I wouldn't rule it out as, absolutely not. I think there's a chance, but it's a small chance.
Are you picking UConn then?
Yeah, I'm going to pick UConn.
All right, Tommy, what about you?
Yeah, on that Twitter thing we did, I also picked UConn, but but hang on a sec, because this isn't going to be I'm picking DePaul to cover convincingly. I think the line's at like 11 or something, which is, I guess I get it, but I'm comfortable. I'm hammering DePaul plus 11. I mean, UConn's defense has been shaky. They're giving up like 75 points per game in their last 5 games. They've lost 4 consecutive road games. In those, DePaul shoots 24 threes a game, and UConn just let Xavier shoot 50% from 3-point range. So I think there is a formula for DePaul to win this game. I don't think that they're going to find that formula, but I don't think this is going to be a blowout.
Yeah. If I'm Dan Hurley this week, I don't think it matters how much you win this game by. I don't think it matters how ugly it is. You just got to find a way to win. Like, that's all this is. Just, UConn this week gets DePaul and Georgetown both on the road. You just have to win those 2 games. It does not matter how. It could be 51-50. It can be 101 to 99. I don't care what the final score is. UConn needs to just get back in the win column. They're below 500 in conference play right now, and I think they do. I think they win this one, and I do think they end up beating Georgetown. But I think both of these are games that can be closer than you would think when you first look at the names.
I think the Georgetown game is much more of a concern for Connecticut than this game, based on the way Georgetown played them the first time around at UConn. But
Georgetown does also seem to be an expert at playing you close for about 30 minutes, and then the other team pulls away. So we'll see what happens in that one. That's going to be next weekend. So we'll be touching on that one on our Thursday night episode. Let's head to Wednesday night in the Big East here. 6:30 Eastern on Fox Sports 1. Just one sec before we get into that. There's 4 Big East games Wednesday night, and they're like all at the same time. There's 2 6:30 games, one on Fox Sports 1, one on CBS Sports, and 2 8:30 games, one on FS1 and one on CBS Sports. So yeah, I know March Madness is coming up. This is where you test out your dual screen setups or your triple screen setups if you want to have some other stuff on there too, so you can make sure you can watch all your basketball at the same time. This is a test right here. There's a lot of Big East action Wednesday night. Game of the week has to be Providence at the Cintas Center. When these 2 teams met last year, a quick history lesson. The first game, the Friars win on a buzzer beater. Jared Bynum hits it. The second game, Providence wins it in triple overtime at Providence. Between those 2 games, Xavier had the ball in a tie game with the shot clock off 3 separate times. Did not score in any of them. That's how close these were. Xavier easily could have won both of those games and swept Providence last year. That's how close the series has been. And that game up in Providence was an odd one with a leaky roof. 3.5 hour long game. Craziest game, I think, in the Big East last season. This is it's 2 great coaches. I'm so excited for Wednesday night. Tommy, what do you think plays out? What's important Wednesday night?
Well, as the self-proclaimed, there we go, third time's a charm, king of Providence Twitter, I'd like to get on my throne here and declare Providence champions of this game. I'm the only one that picked Providence to win in that little Twitter bracket. The only differential in all 100 games we picked was me picking Providence over Xavier. And why not, right? Like I said earlier on in the broadcast, Xavier's offense has been sputtering a little bit, and they're not going to win games with their defense. Providence doesn't have many holes. I mean, there's nothing that they do that's really top 5 in the country. There's nothing that they do that's bottom 200. You know what I mean? They're as solid as they come. I think they're gonna bring it. They're definitely gonna bring it to the Cintas Center, and I like Providence on the road here, Matt.
I like that. I believe, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong here, the Friars don't have a road loss since the TCU game at the end of November there.
Back to back at Creighton at Marquette.
Never mind.
I was gonna say did I incorrectly watch those games? No, I mean Providence has been, besides TCU, Creighton, Marquette, we've been decent on the road in conference play. I think we won at Seton Hall, at Butler, at DePaul, at Villanova. But again, this is the big one here. This is Xavier. There's a lot of layers to this matchup, Matt, that you prefaced before. I'm a little less optimistic than Tommy because Xavier's coming off of a loss and Providence is coming off of an emotional win. I think there's two different states here. Providence is coming into this with a sense of relief, and Xavier's coming into it with a sense of thirst and hunger. With that said, I think Tommy makes a good point. Xavier is trending downwards. Providence has been pretty steady. I think it's going to be one on the wing, though, if I had to get down to a fine-tooth comb to where the game will be won. I think Bryce Hopkins on Zach Fremantle is going to be the determining factor here. Whichever one of those two goes off and has the better game, I think will surge the other team. Will surge their team to victory.
Yeah. I think when I look at the matchups in this one, I think what's the most interesting to me, and I believe the stat I was citing there, Joe, is actually games with Jared Bynum. I think they're 4-1 now on the road with him in the lineup, something like that this season. Yeah. After the Villanova win, I look at the Xavier offense, and I think it can absolutely do to the Friars what we saw Marquette do twice, and we saw Marquette score like crazy on Providence. The way that they pass the ball and create miscommunications is really the one thing that has made Providence's defense have issues this year. I think Xavier's offense is good enough to do that, and their offense might be able to just do enough at home. I think this should be a close one. I think these are two of the best kind of close game coaches out there. Sean Miller is really good. The adjustments he made at UConn to get the final plays in, to call the right stuff at the end, to get Xavier to win that game was huge. I think he's one of the few that can really go toe-to-toe with Ed Cooley in that type of environment. And when you got two teams that I think are really evenly matched here, I will pick the home team. I also think Xavier is a little bit of a bad matchup for Providence. Just what they do, the height of Nunji too. I'm intrigued to see the physicality down low. Bryce Hopkins is a more physical player than a guy like Zach Fremantle. He also usually plays very in control and doesn't foul. And I want to see how the two of them go at it. I want to see how the Friars end up handling Jack Nunji, a guy who gave them issues last season. I look at Clifton Moore as somebody who could be huge in that, who, by the way, I didn't mention this when we were talking about the Providence-Villanova game. Clifton Moore got not one, but 2 blocks on Cam Whitmore in that game, meeting him at the rim for stuff, which I was not expect. I did not think he had that in him.
He had 2 of his 3 on Whitmore, and the box score says 3. I thought he had 4. I could just be misremembering that, but
you might be remembering the Bryce Hopkins block he had in there too, because he ripped the ball away from. Was that also Cam Whitmore?
I think that was also Whitmore from behind.
Yeah.
Just a note on Clifton Moore. He's been coming on off the bench the past couple of games, and I think that's really important as you look at this matchup, Matt, like you said, with Jack Nunji. Nate Watson had some issues with Nunji last year. And remember, Watson was a beast and he was the clear-cut best player on that team. And just Nunji's length gave Watson some issues. I don't think he scored for a significant period of time when we played at Xavier last year. And that was because of Nunji's defense. Clifton Moore is a little bit longer than Nate Watson, a little bit thinner, a little bit more of a Nunji body type. So I think that matchup is definitely interesting, especially given Nunji's got like 4 inches on Croswell, but Croswell's got all the girth.
Yeah.
I think that the paint is definitely interesting to look out for. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Now, Watson was actually held scoreless at Xavier last season, which was tough. And Ed Croswell came off the bench and scored 10 in that one. So the Croswell-Nunji matchup is going to be interesting. A lot going on in this game. I think that's going to be very entertaining to watch and huge, high stakes. Because if one of these teams can sweep the series, that alone might give them the leg up on the competition to win the whole Big East when this is all said and done down the stretch. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to take the home teams in this series. I think they split. I think Xavier gets this one. The Friars get the return trip at the end of February. See how it goes down. The other 6:30 game, Creighton at Georgetown. This is the CBS Sports one, 6:30 Eastern. Tommy, I'll come to you. I think we can go through this one pretty quickly. Is Georgetown going to get a second win in the Big East?
No. Next. No, like literally, I have nothing to add. Like, no. Like there's
Joe?
I'm very high on Creighton right now. Like there's just nothing else to add there.
Yeah, Creighton wins this one comfortably.
Yeah, I think Creighton is basically everything Georgetown isn't right now. That defense is so disciplined. You want to know something interesting about Creighton? I also wrote about this today. They have their defense has the lowest steal percentage in conference play so far. They do not really force turnovers from their opponents. Despite that, they're the best at defense in the conference, and it also isn't close. They're basically number one across the board in every other statistic. They're just rock solid, and having a guy like Ryan Kalkbrenner there is huge for that. But they're just really disciplined. They do a lot really well on defense, and I feel like Georgetown's kryptonite is a team that's incredibly disciplined and rock solid and does a lot of the little things well. That's a bad matchup. I think we're across the board. We're going to take Creighton here. The late window, we'll start with the Fox Sports 1 game, Villanova at Marquette. Tommy, we'll come right back to you here because this is a Nova game, and I want to hear your thoughts. Marquette looking to get the sweep here on Villanova. And would this be the second year in a row for a sweep? Would this be 4 wins in a row?
It would, yeah.
Is it going to happen?
I think it's going to happen. Yeah. I picked Marquette, and I'm going to stick with my pick. But, with that being said, you asked me on Saturday, I would have hammered Marquette. Now I'm a little shaky. We got the return of Justin Moore. Things are trending upwards for Villanova, and Marquette is going to be at home, but they're going to be without the Joneses. Sean and Cam are both going to be absent from this matchup. This is going to be
I thought I saw Cam Jones was supposed to be back for this one.
I was told he was ruled out. I'm not positive though.
We need from the podcast here. I think we need some regulation on injury reporting in college sports now. Now that there's betting on it, we need some kind of injury report here. But yes, Tommy, go ahead.
Yeah, it's crazy. Even if he plays, he's not going to be 100. So I'll leave it. We'll leave it at that. A banged up Cam Jones, a questionable Sean Jones. I definitely think playing in the Fiserv Forum against Marquette any year, even when Villanova's good, the last decade has always been tough. Going on the road to play against Marquette, and this year is going to be no different. I think it's a closer matchup, but I like the Golden Eagles here.
Yeah, we're in agreement again. I don't think Marquette covers, though. I think Whitmore's hot and Justin Moore is going to turn it on. But again, Fiserv Forum is a very difficult place to play, and Marquette has proven the past couple of years that when you play them at home, likely they're going to win.
Yeah, they don't. I think they have one regulation loss there in the last 2 seasons. Like it just doesn't happen. So I think Marquette's got to take this one, and I think they're the better team anyway. So, yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add here other than that I think Marquette is just a better team in playing at home. And this is, if you're wondering how we got to the score graphic, where everybody here at Road to the Garden, we all got a DM. People were asked to be in this thing to pick games. How we all ended up with the exact same picks. This is how. These are the games that we got going on this week. We'll go to the last one, which might be the most controversial of the games that we were unanimous on. Seton Hall at St. John's, also 8:30, CBS Sports Wednesday night. Joe, what are your thoughts on this? Who are you picking in this one?
I'm picking Seton Hall in this one. They owned that first matchup over the Johnnies, and right now St. John's narrowly escaped Georgetown at home at the Garden. I just don't think that's, and you're coming off of a blowout to Creighton before that. I just don't think they have the momentum right now, and I think Seton Hall has been trending upwards. I'd say Seton Hall by 7 or 8.
Right,
Yeah.
Tommy?
Yeah, I like that. I don't know 7 or 8. I'm definitely taking Seton Hall. I think it may be a little bit closer. St. John's likes to play teams a little bit tougher at home. They're going to be in the Garden. It's not a far drive for the Seton Hall faithful, so I assume it's going to be a pretty packed stadium for Wednesday night. I just think Seton Hall's defense is – I mean, this is going to be a very boring game to watch, St. John's and Seton Hall, unless you're a fan of defense and low scoring, in which case –
Hey, well, the first one of these games, Seton Hall scored 88 points, so maybe not. We'll see.
Maybe not. That's very true.
Yeah.
But, yeah, give me the Pirates here.
I'm also taking Seton Hall in this one, but I will say I don't feel great about it in that St. John's is so incredibly inconsistent from game to game and also a better team at home that you just never quite know which group is going to show up. And they have the talent to score 90 in any game they want to if they put it all together with the tempo they play at. That said, Seton Hall's defense is actually, according to KenPom, the best in the Big East right now for the whole season. The Creighton stat before, that's just conference play. For the whole season, it's Seton Hall at the moment. And with how inconsistent St. John's is on offense, I'm taking a Seton Hall. A St. John's blowout win would not surprise me based on how inconsistent these teams are. But from what we've seen, I'm going to take Seton Hall.
This game's at Carnesecca, right?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I thought it was at the Garden. Okay.
So did I. That changes things a little bit.
Yeah. Uh-oh. No, I'm still
can't back out now.
No, I'm not going to back out, but
no, not backing out.
But that does change the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shot through the heart.
St. John's, yeah. Well, St. John's played Xavier kind of close in this arena, and they played a couple close games against teams you wouldn't expect them to in that building. So it's got kind of a neutralizing effect, I think.
Xavier had a pretty good lead on them at Carnesecca too, and they chipped away.
Yeah, and they got it down to a couple of possessions there at the end. So, yeah, it's this is one Seton Hall has to win. Seton Hall has a shot at the tournament right now. They can be the 6th team in the Big East, but these are the games you can't lose.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. All right, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Any final notes before we log off here?
Thank God I can take this background off. There we go. Much better.
Yes, for people who've been doing the audio and not watching, Tommy's had a Providence background this whole time because my Friars beat his Villanova Wildcats this weekend. He was supposed to be wearing a Providence hat, and I forgot to give it to him. So the background was the other thing we went with there.
Got you covered. I got my Providence hat on.
Yeah,
there we go.
I think we'll close here on one note right now. There's a 3-way tie at the top of the Big East right now. 3 teams, not only at 9-2, but I believe all at 17-5 on the regular season. Yeah, that's crazy to have teams that even, and they're all very differently spaced in the metrics. You got Marquette there; they're in the top 10. You've got Xavier there, I believe, at 20 or around there, and then they're in the teens now, I believe, and then Providence at 30. So they're all spaced. They all got to these records differently. They all played very differently in the non-conference, but at the end of the day, what matters is how you play in February and March.
Seeing Hall ahead of UConn, I'm not even a Providence fan, and that brings just like such joy to my heart. It's so crazy too. Like, imagine saying that a month ago.
You know, yeah. I will say this: UConn rejoining the Big East has been the best thing for intra-conference agreement across every other team because UConn is the common enemy now.
They're the outsider. I will add one more note here on UConn because I thought this was interesting, and I was looking this up today. They are still number 6 in the country on KenPom. And you might ask yourself, how does a team who is 5-6 in the conference end up number 6 in the computers? And the answer is they've actually taken a huge drop in their their underlying efficiency rating over the last month. They were just so good in the first 14 games. They had a massive buffer. They were at it's like, what is it? I forget what the EM stands for. Efficiency margin, just offense minus defense. They were like plus 29 points for every 100 possessions through 14 games. And they had like a 7-point advantage on the team that was 10th at that point. So they've gotten 5 points worse over the last month. Only 10 teams have gotten worse over the last month than they have in KenPom. They just had so much of a buffer to work with to start from what they did through the first 14 games that it hasn't really seen a huge drop in the actual ranking. The rating is there for people who want to talk about KenPom. It's noticed that UConn has not played very good basketball over the last month, and it has adjusted. And we'll see what happens over the next 6 weeks here.
Yeah, Matt, as your good friends always tell you, you got to watch the games. The numbers aren't everything. So we will end on that note.
It is noted I don't actually watch basketball. I only look at computers. Ignore what the photos of me at a game on Sunday tell you. I don't actually watch basketball.
Nope,
Interesting.
wasn't there. Wasn't sitting
Yeah.
next to me.
So the Snapchat you sent me next to the court was fake?
It was, yeah.
Yeah,
I hired a body double.
Okay.
Yeah.
pretty accurate.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for this one. That's Joe Howie and Tommy Gooden. I'm Matt St. Jean. We'll be back Thursday night. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Make sure you subscribe to stay up to date with our content. And